So today we're going to be staining a fence with a sprayer. And the first step of any painting or staining project is cleaning. And I have already pressure washed this fence about a week ago. We don't want to just assume that it's dry enough. We'll want to do a moisture test before we do anything. But I just want you to see what the results of cleaning with a pressure washer can be. This area has been cleaned, here has not, and you can see there it's still covered with lichens, algae, mildew, dirt, all manner of contaminants that need to be removed before you can start your staining or painting project. So I've got my moisture meter, about 40 bucks for this particular one. It'll give you a readout of percentage of moisture. You just have to press these prongs into the wood, a 1/16 of an inch, just push them in as far as they'll go in easily, and it'll give you a readout in percentage on this screen here. Push the prongs of this moisture meter into the wood, make sure both prongs are in there, and the readout will be a red illumination of the highest percentage of moisture in the wood, and it's saying that it's 15%, which is the upper limit. Over 15%, you would want to wait and let it dry out some more. 15% or under is fine. So after we've determined that the moisture content is appropriate for staining, the only other thing you might have to do is a little bit of sanding. It's not always necessary, but if your wood is in poor condition, the pressure washing process can actually fuzz it up and kind of break down the top surface of the wood, and it gets a little fuzzy. So a light sanding, you can do it by hand. You can use an orbital, but in this case the fence is curved, so it's not really going to work that well with an orbital. So I just like to use a piece of hand paper, and it will just naturally curve to the contour of the wood. And you can just, it doesn't take much, you just need to knock down that fuzz and make it nice and clean and smooth. This fence isn't that bad, but every once in a while I see an area that was bad and wood fibers that have built up in the cracks between them, and I just run the paper through it vertically and clean it out. So we're going to get ready to stain this fence. I want to talk about the stain options, and first you need to decide oil or latex. I prefer oil, especially on raw wood. It penetrates into the wood deeper, and it is less of a maintenance issue when you need to redo it. It's more of a matter of cleaning and then reapplying, especially with the thinner, the more transparent stains. And then the closer you get to solid stain, the more it acts like paint. You may have some scraping, sanding to do to get it ready. But with transparent, semi-transparent, typically it's just clean it, reapply it. And so that's why I like them. And then also, if you notice with this fence, there are a lot of exposed nail heads and they're rusty. So if you apply a latex product to that, it's going to rust through. It's going to promote activate the rust, and it'll bleed through. So you'd have to block that rust out with a rusty metal primer before you could even think about putting latex on it. So going with oil eliminates that problem, and I have a semi-solid oil here. Like I said, I like transparent, semi-transparent, semi-solid at the most as far as pigment goes, but this will give you a solid color of your choice with just a little bit of the wood grain showing through. Okay, so before you put any product through your sprayer, you're going to want to strain it, even if the can hasn't been opened. There could possibly be contaminants in there or chunks of pigment that didn't completely incorporate in. So you're going to want to strain it, and especially if it's a can that's been opened already. So you want to use a cone filter and place it right on your paint pot and pour the product through that, so you make sure to get any chunks that might clog up your spray tip out of the product before you load it up into the sprayer. Okay, so I'm using a HVLP sprayer, stands for high volume, low pressure. Uses a series of turbine fans to send air through the gun that is the propulsion for the paint. coming out of the cap. There are also airless sprayers that will also work. The reason, and I have several of them and use them frequently, but the reason why I like using this in this application is because we're outside, there's wind, and we're using oil. And the HVLP sprayer produces less overspray that could fly through the air because it uses a lower pressure. When you're using oil, you have to be careful of your surroundings, which way the wind is blowing, and with any paint you do, but especially with oil, because it stays wet as it flies through the air. Latex will actually dry as it flies through the air and land on something as dry fall, or the particles are dry so they could be brushed off. Oil stays wet a lot longer and will stick to whatever it lands on. The technique we're going to use to spray this fence is going to be a vertical technique, because that's the orientation of the boards that we're going to be spraying. If it was a horizontal fence, you'd be going side to side. This is going to be top to bottom, working our way across the fence. And whatever sprayer you have, you'll have a fan with it. The sprayer, the tip of the sprayer should be about a foot away from whatever you're spraying. And whatever the width of that fan is, you want to overlap each pass by half of that width. So if you have a 1 foot swath of paint that you're laying down with the first pass, just move over 6 inches on the next one, go down, move over 6 inches, come up, move over 6 inches, and work your way all the way across. With cap sprayers, which is what this is called, you can change the orientation of the fan to be horizontal or vertical. And with these, the orientation of these tips right here is 90 degrees to where the fan's going to go. So these tips are going vertical, the fan's going to be horizontal. So for this application, with vertical siding, we're going to use a horizontal fan. Okay, so as you noticed when I was spraying vertically and overlapping the fan of the spray by half of the width of the fan, so about 6 inches. I was moving over about 6 inches with every pass. So you're getting about two coats on every surface as you work your way across. I did a section, went back with a full-bodied brush. This is a staining brush, and worked the stain into the wood. It has a lot of texture to it. So you want to make sure you just work it into all the nooks and crannies and make sure it's penetrating into every crevice, and just spraying it won't do that. You have to work it in with a brush. And it was sucking it right up, certainly able to take more stain, so I went back and applied a second coat over that. It's not necessary to work it in again with the brush. You work in the first coat, and then the second coat just evens out the color and adds another layer of stain for it to absorb in. If it doesn't absorb in and it's staying on the surface and running down, dripping, you're putting too much on. So you want to only apply as much stain as the substrate will absorb. The most common mistakes you can make when you're doing this is under or over applying the stain. You want to apply enough stain so that the fence, it will absorb it, and it'll be a nice even color. You see a lot of fences that are all splotchy looking and where it is too light. And also over applying is bad. It'll stay on the surface, it'll drip, run, sag, then you basically have to remove it with your brush till you're taking product off. So you want to make sure you get enough on there so it's a nice even coat, but not too much so you have drips and sags.